My guest today is Jonatan Rasmussen, co-founder and CEO of the company All Gravy, which is an AI-native people operating system for hospitality. Jonatan and I go back a long way. He's a good friend and a sparring partner of mine, and we've invested together in a startup. And I'm also an investor in All Gravy. Full disclosure. Jonatan, great to have you here.
Thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
And Jonatan, when I was preparing for this, I thought there's so many different things we can talk about here. So first and foremost, you're a founder in a fast-growing company. That's very interesting. You are one of the more active angels in Denmark and the Nordics, I would say. You are an LP as well in the Nordic Web Ventures and Forward VC. A lot of V's and W's here. And then All Gravy is trying to be AI native. So there's a lot of very relevant topics we can discuss. And let's see if we touch a little bit on all of them, or if we end up just going deeper on one or two. But perhaps maybe just as a start, could you give a quick intro to you and to all the company All Gravy?
Yeah. So I have a similar background to you. I started my career in the UK. I studied at Oxford, then did consulting with Oliver Wyman for about 3 years, working with PE funds and investment banks, doing Excel sheets and PowerPoints, and eventually grew tired of that. And have then been in the startup world for the last 10 years or so, starting out in a venture studio, so on the VC side, then helping build a small company called M&A Insights. And was part of scaling what's now called Get Why from $1 million to $5 million of ARR, heading up their commercial team. And then eventually I thought I had no more excuses. I'd done the 0 to 1 in the venture studio, 2 to 10 with M&A Insights, and 20 to 50 people at Get Why. So having seen that journey, I felt ready to now jump into the entrepreneurial life. And then I think when you jump into something entrepreneurial, at least for me, it was pretty important to do it in a space I was excited by, right? So I've spent my career selling to JP Morgan, Zopa, Danske Bank, Lego, Maersk, these types of companies, and great people working there, etc. But you don't get like that excited, or I don't get that excited walking into their offices. So when I started a company, I want to find something that I was like truly passionate about, and All Gravy operates in exactly that space, the hospitality space, which I come from. I know that's one of the questions you send me, so I'm just going to dive straight into that, and then I'll get back into the All Gravy, what it is today. But I just think like that's part of the interesting part of like how startups start, right? I think many think that it's like you do the whole McKinsey thing and you look at the markets and you're like, oh, where's that gap in the market? I'm going to jump in there and do something. And I think most of the great startups are not really built that way. I saw someone doing a analysis of the Y Combinator request for startups, like how many of the successful companies that have come out of Y Combinator actually fit any of the themes that they've come out with, and it's like basically zero, right? Which I think just shows that it doesn't come from that like intellectual analysis. It's just like people going into a space that they're excited about or have learned something about, and then like doing something innovative there. Sorry, that was a super randy way of answering your question.
No, but it's interesting. But just why did the hospitality space interest you then?
Yeah, so I come from a hospitality family, right? My growing up, my mom had a cafe, Etty and Branda's Kitchen. She's very good at making food, and they pretty quickly became like fairly famous as a restaurant. But it was a terrible business, right? So like the offices around, they would come down to the cafe at like 10 in the morning and be like, hey, Etty, what's the daily special? And her partner would be like, oh, it's sold out today. You can get a ham sandwich. And, I think, and then they made fantastic ham sandwich. So people just kept coming back, right? Because they made fantastic food. But I think what's interesting about that, apart from the fact that like hospitality is just such like a fun place to work, and like the experiences you have there are great, it just shows that like being a great chef or having great food is not the way to like have a great business. So my mom's business didn't work out for reasons that you can kind of guess from this story. But then my girlfriend's family has had 5 or 6 restaurants where they've ran them in a much more like sort of Excel sheet way, right? Like think about how quickly can we turn tables if we send people home 15 minutes before, if we add flexibility to the schedule so they come in an hour earlier if the sun is out. The difference in margins if our waiters remember to ask people, hey, do you want a coffee after lunch? That is kind of the difference in their cafes. Like they would do like 15 million Danish in revenue, around $2 million, and they would break even if they didn't do any of these things, and they'd have a margin of around 10-15% if they did do this thing where they send people back home 15 minutes early, and if people did remember to ask about the coffee, right? So there's like the mixture of my sort of like excitement for the space. I think it's a fun space to be in, and then understanding that very few companies in this space are making money, and it's all on the people side. It's not on the food side, and this is something that you can do systematically. It's not rocket science, but you need a system. And in the past, these systems have always been people, right? It's been processes, and you've been handing it down sort of like word of mouth. And once you grow to 10, 20 locations, then you start getting a system in place, whether that's tech or just like old school, like PE processes being passed down. But up until that, it's completely random, right? And we see great successes like Joe and the Juice coming out of Denmark, really nailing this. And I thought there's just something interesting about taking an industry that is so ineffective and making it effective. And then as I dove into this, doing user research, both on the HQ side and the end users, it's very clear to me that the tech that they were using today was just super, super shit, right? Like it was both terrible to use as a user, very expensive for the companies to buy because they had to buy like 5, 6, 7 different tools to like manage the problems they had. So, besides me just thinking it's a really fun industry, I also just saw a huge problem there in that the tech was just like underserving the industry.
And if you were, Jonatan, just in like sort of 1 or 2 sentences, what does All Gravy do?
Yeah, sure. So the whole backstory here, right? Like the people side is a difficult thing. So if we just talk about the industry, they have 80% employee turnover, right? So if you have 1,000 employees at the start of the year, you only have 200 of them left at the end of the year. So the only thing you can do to like fix your margins in this industry is get extremely good at retaining these people, but also like getting quickly up to speed. And that is really what All Gravy does. So communications, onboarding of new employees, training them, so you take them from like the lower levels like waiter into a restaurant manager and into the HQ eventually, engagement, and then now starting to allow HQ to run any of their operational workflows through our platform, which we're now then also supporting them with these agentic workflows. So over time, basically taking what a Joe and the Juice or Gales or some of our very biggest customers are able to do, and bringing that down to the level where even if you have 3, 4, 5 locations, suddenly you can start getting all of these advantages that bigger chains usually used to have.
Okay. And that brings me into the next question. So AI, we're going to talk about AI, Jonatan. How does that play in here? And how do you use that? And has that changed? Because, I mean, you launched when did you launch All Gravy again? Has it been 4 or 5 years?
Well, actually, the first business we built, the financial well-being business, we launched 6 years ago, right? Then we relaunched as this new product 3 years ago, which is All Gravy, when we pivoted away from that. But yeah, that was prior to the AI age.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I assume you didn't start building with AI in mind, so this has come in. So is it, or and if so, is it delivering any value in All Gravy today?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of like 2 paths to this question, right? There's the product question to our customers, and then there's the internal in All Gravy. And I think on the customer side, we took a lot of low-hanging fruits at the start with AI, right? What everyone has kind of done is this slightly shallow agent that lives on top, where like you can speak to all of the documents you have, right? So we are like, if you want to use an old school term, like an intranet and a training platform. So we have all context about how your business works, and any employee in the business can like instantly ask and just instantly get an answer to that. Whether it's like, how do I fold the napkin? How do I make a cafe latte? How do I use the point of sale system? So we kind of picked the low-hanging fruits there, right? And now we're then diving into what is it that the director of HR is doing? What is the director of operations is doing on a day-to-day basis that's taking up a load of their time? And then we're taking those workflows and automating them. And we're having the first beta customers on that. So we're starting to see a lot of real value compared to what at the start I think was more like fancy widgets, if I'm being a bit harsh in terms of like what's happened across tech, right? But then I think the other and more interesting question to discuss is like, what does it actually do for our business, right? Like internalizing across all of the departments in our business, especially Claude is what we're using now, right? Like changing the way everyone is working. And then I think that also feeds into the product itself, because once we realize how much more effective we can be in our business using AI, suddenly we're starting to see parallels in the hospitality industry and basically replicating what we're able to do internally in the business.
But talk me a little bit through that, because one of the things we're discussing here internally, and I have a little bit of a prediction that 2026 is going to be the year of the boring stuff around AI, the change management, how people get started. So I would love to hear just like, of course, what you're doing with AI internally, but also like, where did it start? How did it start? Did you have like a eureka moment? Was there some like super users? How did it actually happen?
Yeah, so I've been leaning super hard into AI from day one, right? I've told everyone, get licenses to, Gemini we have out of the box, right? Get license to OpenAI, get license to Claude. We need to be working with this all the time, experimenting. Every time a new model comes out, just use it. Do not worry about tokens. Like that is the last thing I want to be on your mind. So there's always been that approach, right? And then it's kind of shot up in different departments. I think the most productivity we're getting is in software development, right? It started out with the cursor, like being able to make people 20, 30, 40% faster. Like suddenly you can make an animation in, a minute that used to take like half a day to do. Like you can make really simple things. And then I'm just going to focus on the software part first, and then we can jump into the other parts of the business. But then in December 2025, the new Opus model came out in Claude that completely changed everything, right? It went from being something that can increase your speed by, say, 30, 40% to now being able to code entire features, basically, right? So you've gone from being able to gone from autocomplete to it writing for you and you just validating what it does. So we now have a team in our organization that doesn't write manual code anymore. The only thing they do is they do planning sessions. They get domain expertise to speak to a lot of customers, get all of that context into the agents we have that then build out a project plan, build out the tickets, they review those, and then when they accept it, generates the code, and then we validate that and spend a bunch of time testing. So the software engineering team has gone from hand coding to now just being a planning and QA. I say they've basically become really strategic, right? And if we think about
can I double click on that, Jonatan, and just ask the skill set needed for that new kind of role where you're not sort of writing code, but you're more, guiding the agents and being more strategic and being closer to customers. Is that the same skill set, or do you also have to think about like, someone could succeed at the old way of doing it, and now it's a new skill set needed, or new kind of people internally?
It's a bit complicated. Like there's a part of the skill set that's not that useful anymore, which is like the actual like sitting and typing the code bit. But as you get better and better as a developer, more and more of your time is spent thinking about architecture, how things work together, coherence. But there's a completely new skill set that comes up now, which is business understanding, right? Because like effectively what we're seeing in our business is that from design to engineering, there's kind of like a spectrum, right? Like design, product management, engineering. These three roles are completely fluid now. Like you have designers that are now deploying code directly into the code base. You have engineers that are owning the PM piece, speaking directly to the customers if it's like more infrastructure heavy, like the HIS, the workforce management stuff. You have PMs. Like now we try and hire designers that are front-end developers as well, so they can like move more freely between these things. We are trying to train our tech leads, so we get these little pods that we put together, like 2 developers, 1 PM or designer, and maybe like sometimes it's 2 developers and a data scientist. So they just have an area in our business that they own and they can run with. So we try and make these like mini pods that are almost like little startups within the business that just like run.
That's very
Does that
cool.
make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, but then still I'm wondering, like, so you have these, you say it's more fluid, but yet you still have like a data scientist and a designer, or like, because what I'm wondering is just have people also say the skills needed are perhaps more fluid, but have people updated their skills to be able to cover all three? Do you know what I mean? Or like, and I guess what I'm wondering is also like, what does it take? Because even though it's possible, there are just some people who are better just taking on and being, I don't want to say generalist, but actually covering those other areas.
Yeah.
And I'm just, yeah, I don't even know what the question is here. I guess it's just me wondering what it takes to succeed.
No, I get it. Like, but I think it's like, you know, when you're a consultant, you came in to do like an operating model for a business, you started drawing up these like matrices, like dotted lines of reporting and stuff, right? If you think about that as like competencies that you need to have, then within our like PMs and designers are very much becoming the same thing. Our designers need to be able to drive a project, and our PMs need to be able to build prototypes, right? But even within that group, some of them are going to be fantastic at user research. Some of them are incredibly smart about like how like AI dynamics work. What's the UI for AI? So, you know, we'll use some of them for like the AI product. They'll own that and be the lead there. Some of them will help the others with how do we do user research. They can even jump in and do some for that pod. So you have like peaks in the team, and you want to be well covered across like the different skill sets that's needed. Like when we're building the scheduling, the workforce management part, like a big part of that is machine learning, right? Like what are we likely to do in sales this weekend based on what we did last year, and like whatever events are around, and then, you know, qualitative feedback from the GM. There we're using our RevOps team, right? Because they are actuaries and economists. So they get drawn into the product team to build out these models. So we're being much more fluid around like what are the competencies that we have in the business that are needed in a specific case, and people are moving across these little pods. We kind of need the skills. So it becomes a lot more fluid, but the team size at the same time is shrinking compared to the amount of productivity that we are having. So it becomes easier to coordinate, I think, across the teams, because there's just fewer people that are needed to do the things. And just to exemplify, we had a product that we needed to refactor. The first time we built that feature, it took us 6 weeks to build. Then we put Mads, one of our developers, on it, you know, using this new style of development, and he did it in 1 day. Second day, he'd already built like lots of features that we didn't have on the old product, right? So you're able to now go 10 times faster, right? Like your 1 year roadmap is now a 2 month roadmap, which like just has like fundamental impact on what needs to be the strategy of your company. You need to be, in a sense, much more greedy, I think, on the value chain. Like you need to provide a lot more value also to build out the moat that you're going to have over time.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, as you get faster at building, and it gets, let's say, easier generally to build, do you think it's also worth putting more behind go-to-market to capture, like, and you know, sit on those clients?
Yeah, 100%, right? I think the mode shift, right? Like code generated used to be a massive mode. And I still think, in a sense, it is, but way less, right? And the reason is not the code itself, because code generation itself is cheap, moving towards zero, but the business logic that's kind of like trapped within the code you have, or like intrinsically live in that code through the iterations that you've had with customers, that is super valuable. So that's one of the modes, is the business understanding that you've built on your target group. But then the other thing, and it's a little bit the same in GTM/distribution, it's those learnings, those reps that you've taken going to market that provide value back. You just need to become way more effective at going to market, understanding what are the user needs, how do I communicate them. So I think the companies that are getting funded are the ones that are unbelievable at going to market. And you see that with Lovable, Fixer, these companies. Like on one hand, like yes, they are AI companies and the innovations they're making are fantastic, but what they're really fantastic at is actually like the distribution part, right? Like Anton Osika's personal brand is like unbelievable.
Jonatan, like when you hire now for All Gravy, I assume there are things you look for now that you didn't think to look, or that have increased in importance now versus, let's say, 3 years ago. Like, what are sort of some of those skills where you're like, this is really, really important for me when you go out and hire? Like in terms of AI and new skills, like what are you looking for?
So across most departments, I'm now looking for people that are just using Claude every single day and have built stuff in Claude, right? Not because I can't teach people that, but it's just like, if you have like, what the fuck have you been doing if you haven't done that, right? Like you just don't have the curiosity that's needed to be like at the bleeding edge, right?
Mm.
I can hire an account executive or CSM that aren't doing that, because we're providing that scaffolding around them and teaching them that, because like what I need in a AE or a CSM is different. It's very specific skill sets. I just need them, an AE needs to be extremely fucking hungry, and they need to be able to do a discovery and med pick, etc. And then we can build all of the AI stuff around them, right? But if anyone is in a function where they're building, whether that is operations, finance, RevOps, product design, they need to be playing with these tools every day and find it fun. Because if you don't find it fun, you're just not going to get great at it. If you think like, okay, this is a chore, I just like, oh fuck, sorry, I'm swearing a lot. I'm not sure if like that's the thing we do in this podcast.
It's okay.
But
now
if you're okay, but if you're like, this is a chore, right? Oh, I need to like go in and do something. Like, if you're not excited by it, you're just not going to get great at it.
It makes sense. Luckily, I'm not applying for a job at all, Gravy, but super excited about what Claude can do. And I was thinking about it yesterday because I had to compare some. We're doing a salary review, and I had to compare it with an external report, which is just a very simple example of a task that would actually take me quite some time, because the mapping is definitely not straightforward, because they use different setups than us. And just to have Claude work through that and help me make a logic, document it, and I could see, okay, this makes a lot of sense. We're talking like it was maybe 1 to 2 hours versus, days, or maybe not days, but let's say half a full day.
Yeah.
And so it is amazing. And it makes, I get excited about it every day. Okay, let's jump a little bit, Jonatan, because I want to talk a little bit about you as an investor, because you're both actually an angel investor and you're an LP. So, Jonatan, you've raised for some of the best operator angels around. So Bradley Horowitz, who's a former VP of product at Google, Jeppe Rindom, who's the founder of Pleo, and Frederik Hjelm, founder of Voi. And so, like, having some of these fantastic operator angels on your cap table, do you have any learnings about like what actually moved the needle from angels versus those that didn't? Like, what do you value? Let's say you were starting a new company now, or you're bringing in new angels. What are some of those things where you think like, this is super valuable, and this I didn't get anything from?
I think one thing that's really important is that people shouldn't overestimate the value of investors, right? I think we have this sounds like, being an angel investor, I say the same thing. You shouldn't overestimate the value of me, right? Even I think the very best angels out there are not going to make your business. You need to make your business, right? It's not like you get Bradley in and suddenly like your business 10x because he has like crazy insights. Like, they can help you shortcut some specific things. But what angels are absolutely incredible at as you start out a business is that it is way easier to convince a great angel to do an angel ticket into a business than it is to get a VC to be like the anchor of your round or the lead of your round, which means like for our seed rounds, when we got Bradley in, like because he does like proper DD, even though he's just an angel, right? He's like a pretty like well put together angel, I would say. Once he was in and he's like, yeah, I like this. And he then made intros to VCs. That was a very different game to like doing the cold email, etc. Right? So I think the thing to understand around where angels are useful is two things. One is that whole informal network that sits around fundraising, where people are WhatsApping each other, being like, "Hey, have you seen this deal? I've heard, Atomico is talking to them, and your angels are WhatsApping you back, being like, "Hey, I'm meeting, this principal from this fund for lunch today. What should I tell them? What's important to drop in?" Suddenly, you infiltrate that whole like scene behind the fundraising, right? I think that is where angels are incredibly powerful, like rubber stamping you and getting you through some hoops and getting this, like, let's call it FOMO, what, like, it's a terrible word, but whatever is going on behind the scenes, they can start influencing. After that, once the angels are in, you need to think of the angels as being very specific advisors. You need to like categorize your angels, right? Like,
did you think about that when? Oh, I have so many questions about it, the whole angels here. So you touch about so many things. I want to go deeper on, but let's start with this. Like, so the categorization of angels when you found the angels, the seed round. I guess that's where I came in. I didn't put my own name up to next to these great people, but did you think about like what? Did you sort of go through a list and say, "Oh, I would love this one of these people for go to market. I would love one of these for like." Did you think about that, or was it just like, "Here are some fantastic angels, and I want them on board"?
I think it was way more organic than that, to be honest, right? Like you get the ball that like I found a few that I heard were very good. Neil, like he also has his own fund, right? And then I don't remember if it's through him or the other way around. Like I got introduced to Chris Murphy and then to I think actually Andy Hilbig was one of the first angels I got in, right? And they then like when they get excited, they're like, oh, actually I tend to invest with this guy. So like once you get the first few angels in, that just like mushrooms out in a sense, right? So I wasn't targeting angels per se, also because like filling up a round with angels is super hard, right? Like even like the very, very heavyweight angels probably don't do much more than 100K. Like there are some some can do like $1 million, but that is super rare. And they'll usually only do that if you have like a very good lead, right? So like angels are more like, there's a way to get you started and then you can kind of fill up the tail with angels. So it just happened very organically. I think it's more, and I think that is kind of the way. It's a bit more of a casual investor relationship, I think, that you have with angels. But then once you have them in, if you like them, then get them in. Mine was a bit of a party round. I think I maybe have like 45 angels in there. But then once
you have 45 angels in there. Oh, I also want to ask you that. Let's go back to that about like how you got started with this. But of the 45 angels, what has been the most value you've gotten? Like if you don't want to mention names, you don't have to, but I'm just curious, like, is there any one of them or some of them where it's just like, whoa, they actually ended up bringing a lot of value? And what was that value?
Yeah, loads, right? Like the first ones, like Andy Hilbig, Adam Lasry, Therese, Chris Murphy, they really like gave me the understanding of like the VC world, how that works, who I should be speaking to, like how I should think about how I put like the business forward in a sense. Therese also been super helpful with like just sparring on the pitch, right? Because she's just seen like 1,000 pitches, so like just giving like pretty like direct feedback on what works and what doesn't, and like when it like needs to be sharper. I think that has been like crazy high value for me. In a sense, that's a little bit tougher, I think, for the VCs that are leading you around. There's so much more invested. It's so much easier for her to just say what she thinks, in a sense. Then the next group I would say is like someone like Evgeny. He was the product director at Klarna, and now he's CPO at Talentium. Like his product thinking, like and Mads Victor as well. He was at Peakon before. Getting them in to do like actual product workshops with us has been crazy helpful, right? But that's a very specific thing that I ask a specific angel. I have this problem. I know this person is incredibly good at it. They'll probably come in and help us with that. Then you have someone like Phil Chambers, who's like built Peakon to almost a unicorn exit to Workday, right? Like sometimes along the journey, getting 30 minutes, 60 minutes with him to like discuss, hey, we're here. These are the challenges we're facing, has been very helpful. So it's very much about, you don't need to have like a CRM of your angels, even though that's probably smart in categorizing. Okay, when I have this problem, you should probably like know your angels well enough that you can just ping them on WhatsApp. And if you're not at that like relational level with them, you're probably not going to get a crazy amount of value for them.
And then I guess also actually do it, right? At least that's what I tell some of the investments I'm in where they have quite a fair amount of angels. Don't be afraid to ask, because many of us want to try to help. We want to be there. But like, I just see too many just like they get the investors, then they are passive as well. It's like, no, actually ask for favors. Not just in an investor newsletter, but actually reach out and say, hey, Esben, can you please help with this intro or whatever it could be?
Yeah.
Jonatan, I want to take one step back, because you said like, I'm very curious about sort of the example or the practicalities around how did you start when you raised this? You mentioned Neil Murray, who's actually one of the first guests on this podcast. Fantastic guy. Because so you have a business. Just talk me through like what do you remember where the company was? And I'm just for sort of founders at the same stage. I I see so many founders like messing up when they reach out, who like, and it's of course, if you don't understand like how it works in this space, it's very as you like, how do you get in? The VCs get bombarded with intros, right? You know this,
Mm.
but like I really like this approach. Like you find those good angels, but the best angels, they also get a lot of, inbounds. So like, just talk me through like, how did you actually manage to you said there was a lot of referrals, but getting the first ones who then want to refer you, do you remember?
So I did a pre-seed round, right, which like started my network a little bit. Actually, I met Neil at the pre-seed round, but I had 2 term sheets, so we didn't do anything there. Then when I came back to him at the seed round, we'd made a lot of progress by then, so it's easy for him to write a ticket. But my approach to start out with, and I think that can be quite helpful, is every single Friday of every week, from the first day, I kind of like, it's kind of a fluid process going from like unemployed to founder. Like, when are you a founder? When are you just unemployed, right? But like, I was like, to be productive, I and like make myself anyway,
Accountable.
accountable is the word I'm looking for. Yes. So every Friday, I would send out a newsletter to anyone that was interested in what I was doing. Right. So this would be my friends from consulting. I had done a little work at the venture studio, right? So know those guys, and then anyone I met, I reached out to as I was trying to build this like startup, trying to understand the space. I was just like, hey, I'm sending out this newsletter every Friday. Can I add you to it? Would you be interested in understanding what's going on? And then I just kept sending this out, and obviously like it kept me accountable. It also showed people progress, and like I asked for help and stuff. And that just like, again, sort of like mushroom ballooned into other things. And that's actually how I met my co-founder. Someone was like, hey, Christian is bored at Novo Nordisk, and he was at Deloitte before. He's done startups. You should meet him. But then also that's how I got the pre-seed round. It's just like one of them just responded, hey, how would you feel about us investing 3 million krona? I'm like, sounds nice. And so that was like, it's a very like outgoing, just like reaching out to people or telling them about what I'm doing. And you kind of need to be pretty low ego because you're just going to get rejected loads of time. But like some people find that interesting, right? And then once you start building that base out, that's also where you start getting the intros. Other founders see that you're doing stuff. I feel like LinkedIn wasn't that big a thing back then, but now you just start posting on LinkedIn, right? And people will be excited if you know how to write. And if not, you'll have to learn. Like, as a founder, you need to learn how to sell. If you can't sell your story on LinkedIn, I think you'll be struggling.
Yeah, and back to the whole distribution and all this we talked about. Yeah. And one of the things, and I keep bringing it up on the podcast, but the whole sort of angel community, especially ex-operators, is something that interests me a lot. Especially because I think we've seen a lot of this in Sweden, especially in Stockholm, and now we've started seeing much more of this in Denmark and Norway as well. And you're a good example of this, being an operator and also an angel. How are you seeing this development? Are you seeing more exciting angel investors coming up, and that's a new sort of opportunity for how you get funding? As you say, like it's difficult to fill the full round depending on the size of the round, but only angels. But is this now a new alternative that perhaps wasn't as interesting 5-10 years ago? I'm pointing the question quite a lot as I'm saying it because this is what I think, but I'm curious to hear your perspective.
No, for sure, right? And I think there are also angels coming around that can do bigger tickets, right? I think Jeppe is a good example of this. Phil Chambers, obviously. The flat pay guys now can do fairly chunky tickets, and I'm seeing other people putting like these like 30-50K dollar tickets. There's Bjarke who used to be at Creandum is doing decent tickets, and they're all just like, if you convince one of these people that are respected, it's a ticket to play in a sense. And I'm also seeing these pure play angel rounds now, right? Which is a way to get things off the ground. Call it like $200,000 to $500,000, like very, very early rounds, which are where you can put together like a pretty nice team. I invested in something called Opaly not too long ago, right? He did like a fairly small round, but I think with some really good founders involved in the round, and then some of the partners from People Ventures actually came in, I think, just as personal angels. I think that's a fantastic way of just like getting started. And he didn't really need the capital. He had enough to like fund what he wanted to do, but he just like wanted to get started on that whole journey. And then that's probably going to lead into a pre-seed or seed round. So definitely a lot more people now in Denmark able to do this. Like liquidity is not that big yet in Denmark compared to what it is in Sweden, right? There's a lot of like founders who can really lead angel pre-seed rounds, etc. But it's definitely getting much more common, I think, and a good strategy to get you started.
Hmm.
And then there's another thing, like I just want to mention, and maybe this is unrelated, maybe we cut it out, but one thing people are extremely bad at, and this is actually one thing Bradley Horowitz complimented me on, so I was very proud, but is making it extremely easy for people to help you, right? So I get so many people just like adding me, being like, hey, I see Moonfire invested in you. Can you send them this pitch? I'm like, okay, but what is going to happen when I send them that pitch? How does that have any like further impact? And even people I meet for like a coffee, and I do want to help them. I'm pretty busy, and if I have to sit and craft like something compelling to people, I'd much rather they write me a forwardable email being like, hey, Jonatan, I'm very interested in speaking to this fund. I think this is the reason that we're interesting to them. Here are the stats. Could you please, forward, or as discussed, please forward this to them. And then I can forward that, and I can just put 2 sentences in why I think this is a super cool investment, or that I like the guys, or that I think they're smart, or whatever. 10x more likely to convert than me just forwarding some like random pitch deck, right? And it's very obvious to them also. If I'm just forwarding something and I'm not even like wanting to put a few words behind it, they're not going to take the meeting.
This is what back to the point of like when people reach out to me as well, but even more so to venture funds, I just see so many messing it up, and it just seems like it. I don't want to be too harsh here, but it doesn't take a PhD to understand that maybe people don't actually understand how many inbounds they get, and that you need to stand out, or you need to actually do the work. It seems like, if I just, press send to all these people, surely one of them will help me, instead of just investing the time and just focusing on going deep on 2 of them and figuring out what will it actually take to get me through.
But also like spending the time crafting an, incredibly compelling email. Like I spent almost as much time on my cold email as I did on my pitch deck, right? Because I mean, I didn't send the pitch deck. Some people say you have to do that. I think you need the email to be compelling enough that someone opens it on their phone and they're like, fuck, I need to speak to this founder, right? And like, you need to really like turn it up and really be like, what is the data point that seems like, okay, this has just popped, right? Like, and how do I like really like this is going to be huge global. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And actually show that you have spent the time on it, that you've invested time in them. Because if you don't invest time in them, why should they really invest time in getting back to you?
I think on my cold emails, I had something like 80% conversion. Like, but
That's pretty good.
I would sit and I would, and maybe it's harder now, I don't know, right? But I would go into the fund, I would look at the portfolio, I would see what are the relevant companies that they have invested in. Have they written something about the space? Who is the partner that's invested in those? I would write directly to that partner. If they had like their interests on the website or on their LinkedIn, I would mention that, hey, I also, I would do that piece of work. Like that takes 5 minutes per fund.
And what I'm curious about, though, because I very much agree, and I think that has been very successful. I'm just curious how that is now with LLMs, and like how it's getting easier to do that. So if the funds are now just getting so many of those, where there's the research is good, but it's since they're getting bombarded with them. So I just wonder if like the introductions, and that's back to the point of like working with the right people, getting the angels, the people who know the funds, and actually convincing them.
Yeah. And I also think the quality of pre-seed companies right now is fucking insane, at least in the Nordics, right? Like some of the
in
deals,
a good way, I assume.
super strong founders, like super strong traction. Some of the stuff I'm sending to some of the funds where just like, I'm not going to take a meeting. I'm just like, whoa, like 500-600K ARR, bootstrapped, like great AI play. And, the quality must just be super, super high. Like that wasn't the case in 2020 at least, but maybe it's also easier now to get to those points.
Yeah, and it could also be that some of them are still, hurting from old vintage, like the 2021 days of like booming, high valuations, and all of a sudden, they have to be very careful about where they deploy now, right?
So, yeah, The funds are, I think maybe they also used to be more generalist. Like there's like a lot of funds popping up that were all generalist, and maybe they haven't. I'm just hypothesizing here, right? But maybe they haven't returned like what they were expecting to return to the investors, and now they need to get some sort of edge where they like go very, very like vertical, or you need to be North Zone or Creandum, basically, right? Like maybe there's like few of the ones in the middle, so you just need to have a very good match with the funds.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And that, Jonatan, I've started asking like predictions about the startup ecosystem, and I really like those questions. So I'm going to give it to you as well. Do you have any predictions for where I know you're based in Denmark, but you sort of you focus rather internationally, and I don't know how much view you have on the rest of the sort of the Nordics. But do you have any predictions? Where do you think we're going?
I think I have a few, right? Like, so what I've seen in the Danish ecosystem is like when you have these massive successes as like Pleo is, right, a unicorn, you see a lot of like founders popping out of that, right? And then with what you're seeing right now in especially Stockholm with like Lovable, Legora, these like AI native companies that are absolutely exploding, I think we're going to see this next generation of companies coming out of the Nordics that are going to be absolutely huge, right? You're going to have this Lovable Mafia, you're going to have this Legora Mafia. Now, I'm not sure if that's like a crazy prediction to come with, but I think there's great things that are going to come out of that.
That would be fantastic. And I mean, also one of the things we are seeing, we actually work for Lovable. The amount of international talent they attract to Scandinavia or the Nordics, and yeah, maybe some of them will eventually go back to where the US or wherever they come from. But some surely stay, which is also just so powerful for the ecosystem. So like that's a really important sort of effect on the flywheel, right? To get that international talent in.
And then I think sort of like after that, right? Like we've seen like Sweden has been incredible at producing unicorns, right? And then like Denmark, Norway really like struggling compared to them. And like I think unfortunately as a Dane, we're just gonna see them accelerate, right? Like, but like I guess the relative position doesn't really matter. We're just like that much more immature right now as a country, right? We just have fewer people that have been part of building a unicorn, which means there's less people that believe that it can happen. There's less angels that are investing in the ecosystem, and I think we're still developing. We're getting FlatPay is there now. There's still like Pleo. Like there are more and more people. We are moving up that journey, but I just think we're going to see an acceleration of Stockholm in the Nordic scene.
I spoke to a VC from sitting in Stockholm who said like he would put his eggs in the Copenhagen basket or Danish basket right now, because he said like all of the funds are in Stockholm right now. So he's like he was focusing on Denmark. So yeah, let's see. Okay, so last question here, Jonatan. Now you've been running All Gravy, you said for 3 years, but you pivoted after 2 or 3 years, so like 5-6 years in total. What piece of advice would you give to a new founder starting out today?
I think you need to go in with like a certain amount of naivety. Like you need to think that it's pretty easy to build a company, or you're just gonna get depressed eventually of like how much like hardship you have to go through, right? But the thing is like I think it just gets easier and easier, right? Like we've been like 3xing every year in terms of revenue, and I think actually going from 100K to 300K was super, super, super painful for us. 300K to $1 million was a push. $1 million to $3 million of ARR, that didn't feel that hard. That felt more like a machine that's kind of running, right? And then you get into the tweaking phase. So like, I just remember being at like 200K of ARR and looking at 300K, and I was like, Jesus, how are you going to get to $1 million? And I think the piece of advice is like, you just got to get the next customer. Like keep doing that in a systematic way, and then it's just going to get easier. Like it isn't harder to go from $1 million to 3 than it is to go from 300 to $1 million.
But how would you think about, let's say you're starting today and with everything going on with AI, how do you think about, building a moat? Because I mean, some of these companies are growing a lot, but are also at risk of being wiped out.
Mm.
A new model comes or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think you need to think of code as being fungible. Like you can just like swap it out, right? Like it's not that important what exact like database you're using or which framework you're using, and all of that stuff. Like it's just going to get more and more easily replicable, right? Like the actual code that you're writing is getting less and less important. Of course, it should be high quality and stuff, but that, over time, AI is just going to take care of all of that. What you need to be building up is some sort of business logic or understanding of your target group that is very, very hard to copy. That can be, for example, data. You're getting like data that makes your product better, and then I mean, this is like one-on-one. This is not like transformational, right? Or distribution. Find a unique way of distribution. It doesn't even need to be unique. Just get better and better and better, and do iterations where you meet the market. And all of those things, make sure you store them into a company as kind of loops that are making you better, right? And then it doesn't matter that much what you go into. It matters in terms of VC funding, but in terms of building a great business, I don't think it's that important. You just need to go into a market and get really, really fucking good. But what is unique to your business is the understanding of your customers and your users. The more of this context you can build in, document, structure, the better the product you can build and the better the workflows. And that is really, really hard to copy. Mm. But that is also why I'm saying you need to be greedy on the value chain. Like there's only that much business logic you can take if you're only taking a very small part of the value chain. I think that is kind of dying unless there's some regulatory stuff, or the value prop is so valuable and so easy to communicate that you can just explode, like a fixer, for example. Like the thing they're solving, or peak AI, it's not rocket science in my like how I see it, but you can just grow really quickly if you're incredibly good at executing.
Okay, so you think you'll see more companies succeed by taking more of the value chain, basically?
I think so. Either that or like doing something crazy simple that's easy to communicate, like a fixer is doing.
And then winning the clients. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just going to say thank you so much. It was really, really good seeing you and talking to you and hearing about both you as an angel investor, hearing about All Gravy, and touching a little bit about where the startup ecosystem is in the Nordics right now. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.